female, wife, 5 kids, 26 pets. Today, I'm joined by Heidi Shackell, who is the CEO of the WatkinSofa, one of the biggest tenant referencing firms in the UK. How the hell do you juggle all that? Talk to me.
Okay, well, I suppose it's about the people I have around me, both at home and in work. The WatkinSofa came about through, adverse circumstances, really. And so it's kind of always been my first baby before the children came along. And then over time, everything's kind of merged together and fitted in. But I've had, like the people I have at home, whether it be my husband, the people that help me with the children, and obviously the people that I work with make it more than possible. And actually, I think sometimes it's easier going to work than staying at home all the time.
You've been CEO for quite a while now, haven't you?
Yes, and actually it's a funny thing, really, because
How long?
12 and a half years from the very day the company
So you must have
started it. And so actually I've never applied for my job or earned it necessarily. So there's been several points along the way where I've kind of questioned, do I deserve the role? And
do you have imposter syndrome?
Sometimes, yes. And actually I thought about it more this year than ever, bizarrely. But when our business was bought back in 2015, we were bought by a bigger business, but I was asked to run the bigger company. And my team come in as management team. So it wasn't just about me, it was about all of us. And that was definitely a kind of a tick in the box for me in terms of, okay, you haven't got to this place by, creating your own job, and deciding all the rules. Actually, somebody then, and it's continued ever since, as we've kind of bought businesses as we've gone along. I've always sat in the top seat, which I'm really grateful for.
So when you left school, what did you do?
I went straight to work. I wasn't very good at school. I always say if there was parents' evenings in work, it would be a good thing for me because my parents would be probably more proud of me now than they were then. So yeah, went through school. I did my A-levels not really knowing what I wanted to do. And I remember never even going to collect my grades. I had to wait to get them sent in the post. It's very different to my friends. And I went straight to work at Pearl Assurance in Peterborough because I suppose I describe it was like being at university but getting paid because it was so big. It was such a good social kind of thing. And actually I found something that I was really good at. It was in pensions, bizarrely, giving quotes to people when they wanted to retire, but I became their youngest team leader ever. And then I realised I was good at something, which was a change for me.
How old were you when you were a team leader then?
So I was 18 and a half. I'd only been there 6 months.
I mean, in a state agency and letting agency, there, more and more, it's very unlikely for someone of that age to be made a branch manager. What did the bosses spot in you?
I think, first of all, it was probably my passion because from going from being at school where I was always that person that was capable but didn't ever apply herself.
Why?
Because I didn't enjoy it. I had to find it interesting. I loved PE. I was great at PE. I got an A in PE because I liked it. Everything else, I just couldn't find that connection with it, I suppose. Going into work and then suddenly realising I was good at something and I enjoyed it and I could help people and I could see how things could be better, I think they spotted it. And I remember being sat down saying, we're going to give it a shot. We're not sure how it's going to end up, but we'll give it a go.
So were you like in sales, selling the stuff? And
no, I was back office admin.
You were back office admin, but you're still giving quotes. That's not selling things, is it?
No, it was more like, if somebody wanted to retire, you had to calculate what their pension would be, in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, and send out a letter. It was no more than that. It's very manual.
And you just went to, because the two big employers was either Pearl or Thomas Cook at the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you could have gone to Thomas Cook. You just went and got a job because you need to get the beer money.
Yeah, I did. And, my salary, I still remember it. It was just under £8,000 then.
What year was this?
So this would have been 1997, okay. I think, off the top of my head, when I left school. And the other thing I was very fast. I was very productive. And I definitely think that's one thing that's helped me ever since. I could do a lot quickly, but accurately. And so I became in those days, you were promoted because you were good at the job you had, not necessarily the good, you were going to be good at the job you were then next taking.
Because there's an awful lot of, in a state agency, there's an awful lot of people who go out listers or valuers who then get promoted to be branch managers, and the skills of being a lister valuer are completely different to being a branch manager.
Absolutely.
Did you win at that, being a team leader, or did you
I think I
come
did.
across?
I did win, and I got bigger teams and more teams, and then 2 teams and 3 teams and 4 teams really quite quickly. Then I was asked to go and live in Cardiff for a year at the age of 21 to close down a big company and bring it back to Peterborough. That was a massive turning point for me because I was good at that too, and that's kind of why I got into project management really. And then project management's probably been the one skill. I eventually did my exams many years later, but is the one skill that definitely I think if you need.
You're very good at spinning plates.
Spinning plates, but thinking things through logically, coming up with a plan, taking every problem as if every problem's solvable. You just have to work out how you're going to do it.
Are you a very process-driven person?
Yep, I like process. I like control of things, personally, but also within the business.
So on the disc profile, you're an outward-going process person, which means you love to be in control of the situation. Probably your biggest fear is being taken advantage of by others.
Oh yeah, not trusting them, not in a horrible way, but just in a make sure we do it right kind of a way. Not, no shortcuts for me.
Have you got better at that over the years, or have you got worse?
I think the core value is still there, even at home. It's Monday. For anyone that's listening, it's Monday morning. We're sat here. I'll have always filled out the planner for the week for the family. We know what we're doing. Who's doing what when.
Because I know we're going to come on to this, but husband, over 20 pets, 5 kids.
Yeah.
I mean, what's your husband like? Is he the opposite?
He is quite opposite to me. So James is a tree surgeon, and then he runs quite a big now firewood business, like selling kiln dried logs. Brilliant business. But he has such a different attitude to me. He doesn't really like people. He'd rather be dealing with trees than people. And he likes he's way more relaxed than me, which is great.
You need that, don't you?
We need that, yeah. In our family, we need that.
There couldn't be your husband couldn't be like you, could they? It would be just...
No, it wouldn't work. And, we both know where he either stands. Like, don't get me wrong, he has control of a lot of things as well in the family. But yeah, no, we are a good complement for each other, I think.
And how old are your kids? We're filming this in 2024.
Yeah, so Martha's the oldest at 12, and then they're 10, 8, very soon to be 6 this week, and 3.
Excellent. You said that you had a traumatic time before you joined Lettings Hub. Do you mind if I ask what that was about?
Yeah, so we worked at Pearl Assurance. 7 years in, I was made redundant, like a lot of the workforce, and that was a real shock for me.
How did you take that at 25 years old? If you don't mind saying golden bollocks.
Yeah.
You must have been, you'd have gone through the ranks. You must have been put on a pedestal.
I was put on a pedestal. I'd obviously kind of sacrificed a lot for the company, and I'd lived away for a period of time. I'd also been able to buy my first house, so I was grateful as well. And therefore, it was a real shock because it wasn't long after I'd bought my house that, kind of the rug was pulled. And it was like, that's just not fair. That's kind of how it felt. But my boss at the time, who was a great guy called Phil, he said, well, he had also been made redundant. There was, it was a lot of it. It wasn't personal at the time, although it probably felt like I'd probably take too many things personally. But it was an opportunity to go work in Lincoln and kind of join the world of property, really, and tenant referencing and insurance and etc. And
so did you go to work? It's part of Barden then, was that?
Barben, yeah. Back then, it wasn't Barben then. It was way before that. So it was a long time ago.
That's how you got into lettings then.
That's how I got into lettings, yeah. And I went, and I was only going to go for 6 months, and I'd signed a contract saying that my job was going to be head of referencing. Because of all the skills that I'd got at the time. When I joined there, they'd given it to somebody else, and they said, oh, we've changed our mind. What you're going to do is you're going to set up kind of the first change team projects. We're going to do some new stuff. There was a new management team in. They were really good. And I went from kind of staying there for 6 months, which was the original plan, for close to 8 years. And after 8 years, it ended badly. I was fired from my role. and I'd put, again, I hadn't really learnt my lesson from Pearl Assurance. I'd put everything into it. I'd lived in Lincoln half the time.
Did you see it coming?
No, not at all. That's again, it was totally left field. And from being a real kind of key part of that business to being nothing overnight was hard.
I mean, I've been made redundant twice, and it does feel really bad at the time. What advice would you give to anyone listening to this who might be going through that at the moment?
I think it's really, so many people said to me, and, obviously I was made redundant and then I was, sacked from the other was, don't worry, it's just a phase, it will get better. But it was really difficult for me at the time. I'd just brought our forever home, which is kind of where we live now. I was pregnant with my first daughter, and it felt like the world had ended, and it felt like I'd lost not lost a baby, that sounds really dramatic, but it was such a big part of my life. But people always said to me, it's just a phase, it will get better. You'll look back and you'll realise it's, good things come out of bad situations. And that's so true. The Lettings Hub would never have been born. Wouldn't have happened.
I think as Tom Panner says, the best presents in this life sometimes come worse wrapped.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel that way. Was it better the second time?
No, it was worse because of the circumstances, because that did feel personal. And I'd put, so much more into it. I was so passionate about it. Probably the industry, the company as well, but I really loved what I did. I loved the people I worked with. I was pregnant with my first daughter thinking, okay, when the baby is born, I'm still going to make sacrifices and commute and work, and how are we going to handle that as a family? It wasn't the other way around. And it just felt really unfair. That was the problem. It was unjust. That got resolved in court down the line, actually, which was kind of a big part of, my journey. And that was really, really tough. But, I look back now and I'm just so thankful it happened.
Have you forgiven them?
No. But what became really evident is there was people back then, and from every level. There was a lovely lady called Helen who, she still works at the company. She'd worked there way, way before me. Like, how kind she was to me, through when it happened. I'll never forget some of my old managers, who are now kind of competitors, actually, in the space that we're in. They were really supportive, but there were some people that were really cruel. They were unkind, and they were...
Has that given you a fire in your belly?
From day one in the business, it was always about...
This is Lettings Hub.
The Lettings Hub, yeah. It was always about, well, I'm going to do it better then. So absolutely, it was driven in the really early days by, of all the things that I wish we could have done better before, I'm going to make happen now.
How did you turn... I mean, it's a fine balance between it being a fuel and driving you, but at the same time, if you let it become too much of a fuel, it'll consume you.
Yeah.
How do you balance that?
I think early days, I really liked my new world. So actually...
Well, it was your baby, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. So it was my baby. It was born just before literally my first baby. So it happened at the same time when Martha was a few weeks old. I remember going to pick the building that we're going to set up the business in. Within 3 months of her being born, I was back to work full time, and, the business was alive. So it was a passion from the start. The business back then was really... On those first days, on the 1st of November, I remember sat there in the building on my own, going, okay, it's all down to you. You've got to make this work, But actually, very quickly, it became about, the first 5 people that joined, and me, and now, there's 140 people in our business, and there's so much passion in the business that I can relax. I can. It's not about being the best; it's doing a really good job.
What have you learnt being a mum? And and if you were a man, I wouldn't be asking this question. So just before anyone kicks off, but I have to have these questions.
Yeah.
What do you find the most challenging thing, and what have you done to make that better? Being a mum.
I think...
Or being a woman, or whatever, in whatever context, answer that question. And as I said, I wouldn't ask that question if you were a man, but I'm very passionate about telling people stories so we can help others watching this, both men and women?
I think it's probably hiding feelings, not being emotional, but hiding feelings. Like if I really wanted to go to sports day, I'm very competitive. The kids are good at sport as well, actually. Um, so that's like, massive day in our year as a family, it's become one. Instead of kind of saying, back in the early days, I really want to go to sports day, so I'm going to kind of clock off for a couple of hours and, I'll, not even have to explain it really, because, my hours are not ever normal 9 to 5. You kind of, now that's changed a lot where I just say it as it is, but there's been so many times where you don't feel you can be truthful necessarily. Not that you would lie, but that you don't really want to say what you really want to do. And everything's a compromise then.
Isn't life a compromise?
Yeah, but
Is it different? Again, I'm not a woman, so I wouldn't know, and we've not been blessed with children. But do you think it is different if you were a man?
yes, I do. And obviously I'm not a man, so I can only talk about it from my perspective. But I think that there is a huge amount of pressure on women to be great at everything. I think if you are successful in your career as a woman, especially in our industry,
Does that pressure come from you or from your perception that other women are judging you? Because again, I talk to an awful lot of women, and a lot, men could give a flying F about what other people think about them, but
yeah,
there's a lot of judgment.
I don't necessarily think it's women judging. I think actually I've realised that it's really important to be like that, so other women feel they can be like it too. I think it's judgment of men, judgment of your seniors. In a lot of my career, my bosses have been men. They all, in fact, all of them have. I've never had a female boss actually.
You ought to have one. They're really good, actually.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I'd actually
All my
probably
best
quite like
bosses
one. Yeah. But yeah, they've always been male, so that's you just kind of try and I'd love it for women to be able to succeed without having to act like being a man.
That's that's absolutely bang on, because there's some fantastic women in our industry who don't go around acting like a man with even bigger balls.
Yeah,
The likes of your Heather Staffs of this world, who are amazing. Your Sarah
yeah,
Edmondsons. They're not round. They're not big and brash or trying to.
no,
They're just themselves and get on with life.
yeah, and wanting to do a great job. That's what drives me. Someone said to me once, "So what are you motivated by?" And I was like, "Well, fear of not doing a good job. Like that would be the worst thing for me." I think that's a very female thing.
But it can paralyze you, because you said earlier on that you suffer from imposter syndrome. Although I think just about every single person that sat on that sofa suffers from imposter syndrome.
Yeah, maybe. Probably going back to where we started talking about here, being at school, being not good at stuff.
Yes, but you don't like the criticism, do you?
Don't really like the criticism, but I've got really good at taking it. My team are pretty good at telling me, which is, that's again, it comes back to, surrounding yourself with great people, not people that can do the job, but people that can be totally honest.
What advice would you give to anyone, especially women, who feel that they're hitting a glass ceiling?
I, it's so hard because for me, how do I answer that question? There is no ceiling. It's not there. Often we put it up. Like, we put it up ourselves, really, rather than it actually existing.
Because the amount of times I've heard, let's just say that there's a job and there's 10 bullet points and I know most men, if they get 7, they'll go for it.
Yeah.
But I know many women who've got 9 but not number 10 and won't even apply for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've got to kind of very much view things differently and give it a go. Like we've got to give it a go. We've got to try. We've got to be the ones kind of put out there. It's like, going back to the industry conferences that we've all attended over the years. The majority of speakers have been male. That's because many men will throw their hat into the ring. If you want someone, I'm happy to do that. It's very rare for a woman to do that, even though it's become more balanced now. If I think back to, over all my career, the people that have asked me for a pay rise, it's way more likely to have been a man than a woman. So, you've got to look out for the women too, because they probably think it, they're just dead and ask. I do a meeting with every new person that joins our business. It will be the guys in the room that will tell me what they've achieved, even in their first month of being there. They'll want to, say. So it's becoming more clear, I suppose, in my head than ever that we need to try and, boost the women up to give them the confidence to do it. I'm probably more confident than some and haven't really appreciated that until more recently, maybe.
Let's start bringing this conversation to the end, and I just want to talk about the future. Now, we have come a long way, and we've got wonderful things like Women in Estate Agency Facebook group and the conference.
Yep.
But something still tells me we've got an awful long way to go.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this?
I 100% agree. And I think I was a little bit naive to it before, going to the conference earlier this year. That was a massive kind of eye opener for me, and listening and kind of being a lot more aware. I think we've got more women than men work in our industry, but only 20% of women in kind of top positions, whether that be, running an estate agency in the UK or in CEO positions, etc. That's wrong. There's an imbalance there. And that does need to change, and we've got to help people feel they can get to that place. Massive change of events with the new Labour government coming in. 41% of people are now female on that top team. That's a good start.
Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.